Is it?
Yeah, let's get this puppy on the road.
I left my phone at home tonight.
Get this puppy
Let's get
on
this
the
puppy
road.
moving.
I don't know what time it is.
I guess I'm a little late. It's a little after 6. I'd like to call our meeting to order. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first meeting tonight is going to be the Water and Sewer Commissioners. A little business to take care of as far as the budget goes. And the first item on the Water Sewer Commissioners meeting agenda is citizens' comments. If there is someone that would like to address the Water Sewer Commissioners regarding something that is not on the budget, now would be the time to do so. All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is approval of the final water budget. So, Julie, can you take us through this? It doesn't seem like it's changed much since the last time we reviewed it. It's
Nope.
pretty straightforward.
Yep, it really has not changed at all. Numbers are finalized. Water ended this year with a surplus, and as did all departments. And so, yeah, there really has nothing changed since Jeff proposed it about a month ago.
Anybody have any questions or concerns on the water budget?
I have none.
Heather, Lee, you hear what?
No, I just think it's great that it looks so good, so thank you. Which I know that did work.
Department heads went through a lot of work to do their budgeting this year. They started from a zero-based budgeting, and they've kept their costs under control this year, and the budget for next year reflects that. We need a motion on this to approve the total expenditures on this one, Julie?
On the water and sewer budget, you don't actually make motions because they're enterprise funds. You're just approving the budget as presented.
Okay.
So do we need to make a motion to approve it?
You don't.
Okay.
Sorry, I probably said that confusingly, didn't I? I'm sorry.
Well, if there's no concerns with it, the water budget seems like it's approved by the commissioners, and we'll go on to the sewer budget. Grab that. Basically, this is the same thing as what was that we went over about a month ago or so. There's no changes on it, nothing popped up. And was there a surplus on this one too, Julie, or no?
Yes, water, sewer, the surplus, the net sewer fund is 134,517.60.
Yeah. And we're basically done with our rate increases at this point.
Yes, for both you are. We have met the thresholds that we needed to for the water loan program that we went through. So I'm not anticipating in the near future that there would need to be an increase in any of those rates. The next discussion would probably, from what I'm thinking now, would be in the next couple of years when we start talking about the sewer upgrade.
Well, that's good news that the sewer rates and the water rates are going to be staying where they are now.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
stabilized.
we're still trying, as far as water goes, trying to figure out with the state whether we can use Canal Street or drill a second backup well, because we should have a redundant well.
Yep.
And,
So that's the next project.
right,
But again, I'm not anticipating there would need to be an increase in rates for that, so.
no.
Canal Street, there were some stipulations from the state regarding using it if we had to.
Yeah, they still want to keep that as an emergency backup well, but it also, unless it can be developed more, it's not going to have the volume to meet the needs. It's not even half of what the Jeffrey well is right now, so.
So we'll keep people informed on that. So I gather, any other questions or concerns on the sewer department budget? Jeff, anything you want to add regarding either of these two budgets?
Other than the water, while I'm trying to increase our water production to meet any future business needs, been working long and hard with Drews, and they've put in a pre-treatment, and now they're going to put a chiller in their cooling tunnel, which will eliminate the need for them to use 20 to 30,000 gallons a day to cool their product. It will recycle the water in there and cool them that way, and it will save them money. It'll save us using that much more water. Plus, it's also 20 to 30,000 gallons more a day that we will have to process in the wastewater. So, when they get that done, it should help us, give us a little more breathing room in both departments.
That makes sense as far as a lot of way goes, as far as just economically and environmentally for that matter also.
Yep.
Excellent. So we're all set with that? Yep. As far as approving the water budget and the sewer budget, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our water sewer commissioner meeting.
So moved.
Lee's the motion. Is there a second? Lee Dakins is second. All those in favor of adjourning the water sewer commissioners meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, and now we'll go right into our special select board meeting. And the only reason we really call it a special select board meeting because it didn't start at the time that we usually do. The first item on our agenda is to approve our minutes from our December 2nd Water Sewer Commissioners meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the December 2nd Water Wastewater Commissioners meeting minutes.
I'll second it.
Lee Gustafson's the motion and Jeff Holden's the second. Any corrections, omissions, changes, anything catches anybody's eye on those minutes?
Look good to me.
All good? All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Nobody opposed. And now, I would entertain a motion to approve our January 6th Select Board meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve the January 6, 2021 Select Board meeting minutes.
Lee Gustafson's the motion and Lee Dakins the second. Any discussion on them? Changes, corrections, omissions? Anybody have anything on these guys?
I had none.
Everybody's okay with them? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 And no one opposed? All set with that. Take care of that paperwork. Next item is citizens' comments. If there is someone that would hear or electronically on Zoom would like to address the board regarding a matter that is not on the agenda or make any comments, now would be the time to do so. Any citizens' comments? All quiet. Any answers from previous meetings? I don't believe so. Julie, I don't know.
No.
No? Nothing from the
No.
previous meeting?
No.
All right. So we'll go on to our next item, which is old business. Julie, can you take us to our old business?
I can. Not a ton has changed. Public safety building. If you've driven down Pleasant Street at all, you can see there's a lot happening every day. The building is taking shape. They'll be pouring the final slab relatively soon and starting on interior walls. So it's coming along well. It's staying within budget. I don't think there's been any change orders to date. So it really is taking shape and working well. Russell is right on top of everything. We all feel very comfortable. using them.
There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on that little site, and their foreman, their construction manager over there is really good.
Yep.
Nobody is getting away with anything on that site, so I can tell you that for sure. So, building's coming along.
Jeff, have you stopped by there recently?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been there in the last week and a half or so, but I'm talking with the site super there. He's really on top of
Yeah.
it. I was really pleased with the way he dealt with the placement of the water mains and stuff.
Yep.
And he was, he made sure it got compacted correctly and everything. And basins, that's the way they work anyway, so. And we were probably pretty lucky with who we got working down there, so I'm confident in the outcome, the
And all,
product.
all the department heads associated with that building have stopped over on occasion to just kind of poke around, and everybody has been. So we've got a lot of eyes on it, which has been helpful. And everybody's very comfortable
Nice.
with what's going on, so.
Well, that's great news.
Yeah, it is.
That's
It is.
great news.
We're going to have a great product at the end.
What is the completion date, the estimated completion date for that?
The first week of June.
First week of June?
Yeah, we should have a certificate of occupancy the first week of June. And so we're now talking about, we're finaling up the designs for the town garage for renovations over there, getting that the way we want it. Numbers will be getting estimated for that, and then we'll be going out to bid. The plan right now is that town garage will be done by the first week in November.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
I spoke with Kirby a couple times, and they originally planned on putting the water main in the back of that building?
Yeah, we caught that.
Okay.
So they thought, for some reason, they thought the water came into the building, at the back of the building.
Okay.
And Kirby let them know where it did. So they probably will be reaching out to you.
Yep.
Because we had let Kevin know they're kind of moving some things around when they got it to where they wanted it and where we think it is best. It's
Yep.
going to be coming to you to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move the sprinkler works to the front of the building where the
Correct.
8-inch main is, so.
Correct. For some reason, they were thinking it came to the back of the building.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
not sure where they got that from, but.
Okay.
That's a big difference there.
Yeah.
It's a very big difference, especially in cost of running pipe. So they're maneuvering all that around. When they get me a next round of design, we'll be showing it to you to make sure we've got it where we want it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by this time next year, we'll be in a renovated building and a new building.
And this meeting will be downstairs.
Wow,
Yes,
it's pretty exciting stuff.
yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Police department, so I have been working with Jim. Jim and I have had some really good conversations about the potential of an advisory committee that would work with the police department. And we'll be presenting something with that in February, probably closer to the second meeting in February. It is not a committee that will have oversight as far as discipline of police officers. That is not done in the state of Vermont and is not recommended in the state of Vermont. But there is a really good protocol and history in place of advisory committees that work with police departments. And, in kind of talking through that with Rick and how he, feels about that, he is on board with that too and can see some real benefits. So that'll be something that'll be coming. We'll be presenting again in February.
I know that our police department policies were being reviewed,
Correct.
so that's
That's
almost
going to kind of all
finished.
come together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to all circle around together.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeffrey Barn, so I met with Steve Mancuso, and he's kind of rallying the contractors in town, as he had come to the last meeting and talked about this. They're meeting with Jeff Holden, kind of one-on-one to go over and look at the building. Jeff's letting them inside. He knows where all the danger spots are. So they're going to work up a plan of what they think would be a way to kind of patch it up and then come back to me. Once I hear back from them, then we'll put it on an agenda for a community discussion about what you want to do with that building.
Jeff, if you, when you go to do that, just drop me a message of when you're going to be doing that. I would kind of like to just tag along and see what's going on. I don't want it scheduled around my schedule whatsoever, just you and whatever gentleman you were doing.
Well, I mean, whenever, because so far it's been Lee and Steve, and nobody else has contacted me
Well, if
yet.
you've already got 2 guys going, then I'll stay out of it, because once you add the third to it, it has to be a warned meeting, and we can't discuss
Well,
it.
so I went to see it yesterday, was it? Or Monday?
Monday.
That's right, it was a holiday. Just because I'd never been in the building, I
Yeah.
wanted to get my eyes on it, and it was, we were there 10 minutes maybe, because there's not a whole lot to look at other than,
Yeah, I haven't been in there in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I told Lee, and I'll say it again, that we really got took to the cleaners on that deal, because all the parts and stuff that were in there, I mean, they cut out beams and stuff that I don't think were necessary. They cut holes in the side of the barn to get all the stuff out of there. They took out like 9 tractor trailer loads of new old snowmobile parts.
Stuff.
And they get the money for that, and plus we paid them to do it. But they left a mess. But I can tell you, since the first time I spotted that bulge in the barn, that thing hasn't moved since they got the stuff out of there in the last 12, 14 years. It's still, because each section of the barn is like an individual box, so it pretty much sustains itself. And the biggest thing is the sills are all still in good shape, because they're on stone walls that up above where the water doesn't splash on them. So, I mean, I don't think it's a rush. It would be nice to get that thing pulled back in and then go from there, so it wasn't rotten anymore, but it's still pretty solid I mean, sturdy compared to where it was.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the contractors are going to say on it.
This QAnon conspiracy theory approach our group.
Thank you.
Excuse me, someone out there
We
is...
muted them. They're muted.
Oh, okay. I'm hearing the local news coming, or the national news coming across at our meeting, so. All right.
And then the Fall Festival, so I attended the initial Zoom meeting where some community members were getting together to talk about the Fall Festival. I am not part of that committee, but they have kind of kept me up to date. It is a group of pretty much merchants on the green who have all assembled. They've got some great ideas, a lot of great energy going, and going to make some changes, do some things a little bit differently, try to keep it more Vermont, and do some ag-related stuff. Maybe have somebody shearing sheep and a maple syrup guy, and kind of keeping it more ag-related. They'll be coming back with kind of all their changes assembled, and some of the use of town property may change a little bit for that particular weekend. So they'll be back with their request, but I think it's going to be. It's a good group that they have working together. I think it's going to be a good event.
Do they have
for
a
the town.
name for this group?
What was that?
Do they have a name for this group?
The last I knew, they were working on setting up their own 501c3, and it was something along the lines of Chester Community Events or something like that. Their main focus right now is the Fall Festival, but I think they're kind of looking ahead to other events to have in
Yeah.
town as well. So I think something good will come from it.
And I just want to put out there, the Legion has had discussions about this a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we are in no way trying to steal anybody's glory.
Oh,
We
no.
will, I just putting it out there that whatever we can do to help, if they have overflow, or they want to put somebody down there in our field, that's fine, but
Yeah.
we do not feel the need to take this over, so.
No. And I think that they are going to, they may be reaching out to you guys, because they're talking about not just having it on the green. That was a part of the discussion when I was initially at that initial meeting, was kind of doing a bunch of different things around town and making a big, long weekend of it, and so wouldn't surprise me if they reach out.
Well, that's really great that a group of citizens have decided to
Yes.
take this over.
Absolutely.
Because it's been a tradition for what, 40, how many years?
40, I think it's 40 years.
40, 45 years
yeah.
and stuff, and I would hate to see the town lose an important event like that. And the fact that some people are stepping up.
Yeah.
And they're working together to do it, and then the Legion's offering to help, and there's other people offering to help where they can. It's really positive for the community. That's
And we
great.
owe a debt of gratitude to the Rotary for all the work that they've done over the past,
Yeah,
over 40 years or whatever.
Heather's trying to get,
that's true. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, I just am genuinely what you're saying, Arnie and Lee, you know, a fantastic event, the history of it, a lot of work went into it, thank you, but it's good that we have a group that's gonna carry it on. It's fabulous.
And I would also like to add, I hope that the high school students and groups from the high school aren't left out, because that was a huge, wonderful place for them to be able to join in the community, do the things, whether it's fundraising for their classes and so forth and so on. So let's not forget about this.
Yeah, that's an important part also, with the schools involved like that, and the kids and all their fundraising and all their time on the green. It's just a special event, it really is. It's a fantastic event. Is that it, Julie, for what you have on your list?
Yep.
Does anybody else have anything they would like to talk about or add to our old business list? Well, hearing none, we'll go on to our next agenda item, which I think could also become a fantastic community project, an event, or just in addition to the community in so many different ways. And it's the Chester Community Greenhouse and Gardens. And with us, I think online, we have some of the directors, Cheryl Joy Lipton, Melody Reed, Robert Need, and Tim Roper. Is that everybody that's going to be here with us from the Community Gardens Group?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep, and thank you for giving us this time tonight. Most of you have a good idea already of what the Chester Community Greenhouse and Gardens is from news articles, from the previous presentations, and the document in your packet today for today's meeting, which includes some history on the project and on the greenhouse, and our mission statement and goals. It has a table with the sites that we're evaluating and some of the letters of support that we've received, among other things. And if anybody else needs another document, we can get that to you. So since that's the case, I'm just really going to give you a brief update of where we are now, because I want to devote most of the time that we have to answering any questions that you may have. Our board now consists of the 4 members that Arnie, us 4, and also Luna Birkland, who actually is a high school student, and she couldn't be here tonight because she's a basketball player, so she's practicing. Otherwise, she would be here also. And so it's us 5. And since July, when we first presented our project, we have become a Vermont nonprofit corporation with 501c3 status, so that any donations are now tax deductible. Our seed campaign generated $5,400 from grants and donations, and that does not include the in-kind contributions we've had of consulting and legal fees. We've spent $1,700 so far, leaving us with a balance of about $3,700. So to date, we've had 4 presentations, most recently for the Whiting Library for the Food in Your Backyard program. And we have a website that is now up and running, so it's evolving. And the things that we're planning for next are a contest to develop a logo, an engineering study to see if the galvanized steel frame can support energy efficient lapped glazing, which would make it so that we could use the greenhouse in all months of the year. But unfortunately, this pandemic has given us an obstacle here. since the Mertz Library at the New York Botanical Gardens is closed, and that is what houses the technical drawings that we need for the engineering study. But it's not we can get past that obstacle. We're fighting looking for a site, developing a site plan and a realistic budget. That realistic budget will let us then conduct a capital campaign and major grant funding. So since our booklets went out to you, which has all the letters of support in it, we've received several more, including one from the Chester Andover Family Center and one from Dr. Joshua Farley, who is at UVM. And what we've come to you for today are two things. One is simply a resolution of support for the project as a whole. And the other is that you would agree to consider giving the Chester Community Greenhouse and Gardens the use of town property if one is found to be a preferred site. We have been and will continue to work diligently to find the very best location possible. And we want this greenhouse to be for the community, for the town of Chester. So with that, I would like to take any questions that any of you might have.
Well, when the support of the board, I could speak for myself as far as this project goes, and I overwhelmingly support this project, and hopefully it comes to fruition. And it seems like with the leadership you have and the group that you have, we're heading in the right direction. Part of the items that you talked about were town property, and that would require a little more work on the town side as far as discussions regarding the properties that are there and which ones would be available or not available. And it also would require a majority of the board or possibly even town input as far as choices and decisions being made regarding properties and stuff. It's not unheard of that we lease out properties and we share properties. The Chester Historical Society rents a building in town, so it's not out of the question for the town to be in that capacity where it offers a lease or something. It would have to go through some town attorney and review and a lot of other things. But because of the benefits of a project like this that I see as far as the town goes, economically, socially, environmentally, I think it would be a huge plus for the town in a lot of different ways. And I'm curious about how the rest of the board feels on a project like this and some of the items that were brought up.
I think,
Hi, this is Heather. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
I agree wholeheartedly that I'm super supportive of the project, anything we can do to help. I think before we commit to land, like I'm totally open to that for sure, but it's just the devil's in the details. So what you asked for, what Cheryl was, tell me what you asked for again, is a statement. Was it a statement?
Well, no, just really.
A resolution?
For one thing, a resolution, yes, that you just in general agree with the project and want to support it as a body. The other thing is not a gift of the land, but an agreement that you might consider a property. Just agree to consider a property if one of the properties that we're looking, if one of the sites that we're looking at is deemed the most suitable, the most preferred.
Well, I'm certainly open to that, Arnie. I'm not sure how we legally do that. Julie, do we know?
I think at the moment, she's just asking for you to consider it when they present it. So I don't think that she's really asking for anything in writing at this time, Cheryl, are you?
No.
Yeah.
Though it would be nice to have a level of support, but just a resolution is good
Yeah.
to support.
I think,
and the support.
yeah, I think if the board wants to, I mean, it's just in the wording, so I think if the board wants to agree that it supports the project, you know, the principles of the project, and, you know, if town property is what is deemed to be the most suitable, that they're willing to, you know, do the research and that is necessary to determine, you know, if that's something that can work together. There's no harm in that.
Yeah,
It doesn't need any.
Well, and do you need it in writing separate than the minutes, or are the minutes enough? I don't know.
I would think this would be a resolution or a letter of support that is signed by the board. I mean, we could probably get a couple of board members and Julie up together to prepare this letter and bring it back to another meeting so that we all could read it and agree upon it, and, you know, just tweak it out if we have to and stuff. And then sign it as a board.
Yep.
So it can be included in your package for when you apply for grants or for when you're looking for support from other areas, that will show you that the town is behind you and trying to support you and trying to help you out in this endeavor. And the land part of it, it seems like we're all willing to consider it. There is a lot more, like you were saying, to the details on that and how it would work, and to make sure that we get the community involved in it as far as any decisions that we would make on something like this. I would like to get a little bit of feedback from the community. I have talked to people, you know, by myself regarding this project, and every time I mention anything about the town properties and stuff, I've always had positive answers when it comes to this project and possibly, and at this point, it's just possibly being on town land and stuff.
It would be very helpful. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say thank you so much. I went through this pamphlet that you all gave us, and it was so informative, and it was so understandable. And I'm just, one of my questions maybe to Julie is, there a way that portions of this or the whole thing in some way could be incorporated into our town report that we always have in our March meetings?
I have a digital copy of this. If it's kind of big to put in the town report, but if you guys want to narrow down and select certain pieces that you'd like to be in the town report, just let me know. It's a great way to get the word out, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea, Lee.
This is Robert. We'd be happy to do that as well. We can kind of make it more concise and essentially get to the crux of what the issues are. In terms of the site, I just want to be really clear that we've been working for months on, first of all, developing a matrix that helps us evaluate a site, what we need to think about from a planning perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a community perspective. And actually, the majority of the sites we've looked at so far are on private property. It's just that we don't know where we're going to end up at the end of this search. And if it does turn out to be town property, we at least like the board had to have an opportunity to think about whether or not that's something that they would consider, and then work out the details from that point on. But we're not there yet. Clearly, we're not there yet. And we're still asking the community to make suggestions and recommendations for potential sites, and primarily private property, because that's what we expect to get in terms of recommendations. So, but we really appreciate you thinking about this, and we would appreciate your support.
Well, in full disclosure, I think Heather would be extremely excited about this project going forward, since she's storing the project in her barn on her property there. And a lot of us have spent some hours lugging that project into the barn there, and it would be pretty exciting to take it out and put it all back together as a giant erector set that it seems like it is. It is an amazing building.
Timeline, but I won't.
We've actually taken a stab at this, and I think once the site is established, this kind of a building blocks kind of thing, once the site is established, we can then work on site-specific costs and develop a good solid budget, then do the capital campaign. But we're optimistic that once a site has been identified, it would be 18 to 24 months until we're up and running.
Another obstacle really is the drawings and getting the engineering report, because we would much prefer to do the lapped glazing, which means that we'll be able to use that greenhouse 12 months out of the year. If we don't, we're not going to be, it'll be extended seasons on both the end and the beginning and the end of the season, but we won't be able to use it for the coldest months. And we'd like to put that, it's a bit much different price to use the lapped glazing than single glazing. So we'll have to wait till we can get that engineering study done. And, I don't know when the library will be reopened, so I'm a little surprised that it's not open now.
Well, I am extremely excited about this project myself. And to see that building erected on somewhere in town and doing what it's going to be doing will be simply amazing. And I thank all you folks that are involved in this. I know it's a lot of hard work and a lot of time, and it's much appreciated by our community that you people have taken this on. It's a fantastic project.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I support it, but I didn't get a brochure. But I do have a couple of questions that might help me.
I emailed it, and there was a copy in your box. It didn't get into your packet.
It didn't get into the, okay.
It's in your box.
The
All
hard
right.
copy is
It
really
got covered then.
exceptional. It's really
Okay.
concise and really does a good job.
Okay. But what are the requirements for this? Obviously, you need to have access to water. How big of a site and how much parking space and that type of thing?
Well, the greenhouse is 100 by 32 feet wide, and we would like to have garden plots outside the greenhouse as well. So we need a site at least that large. We're looking for something along the idea of 2 or 3 acres, so that we can have the gardens outside as well. And yes, we'll need water.
Okay.
Also, probably have a shed as well, or depending on the site and depending on the specifics of what's existing there already, we'll need to have an interior space as well, probably.
Okay.
And we of course have to consider things like setbacks and all the zoning requirements. To give you an example, we were offered a wonderful site behind St. Luke's right on the Common, which would just be a beautiful location, but we can't figure out a way to meet the setback requirements. So those are the kind of things we have to consider. There's a kind of a long list of requirements that we have to meet.
And Jeff, that is in, some of that's in the packet, in the booklet that you'll get.
Copy, Jeff.
Yeah.
Any other
I will
questions?
definitely keep my eyes open if I can come up with any ideas, because I think it's a great idea.
Feel free to call any of us, reach out to them.
One of the most interesting pieces of it and exciting pieces of it is, as you laid out in your booklet, wanting it to be a walking project. You be able to walk to it within the town. And I think that's really exciting. And I'm looking forward to it having the progress in things.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of our primary concerns, is that it be in the village and have the most amount of people able to walk to it. And also, people who don't live in the village then can drive and park close by and walk. We don't want to provide a ton of parking for the site. We want to use existing parking and encourage walking.
Well, I think it's a great idea also, and looking forward to seeing more details on it. That's what I need to help me make a decision, especially if the plan is, to put it on public property rather than private property. There's a lot of questions I have relative to those details. So I'm looking forward to more information.
Great.
Lee, do you have any questions for us now? Because we can try to answer some of your questions.
Well, again, relative to private property, not as many questions, but if it's on town land, there's always a possibility that things go south, and so not to jinx it, but a going out of business plan. What happens when there's not enough money to maintain it? Who then takes ownership of it? Who has to deal with maintaining it and keeping things in order? If it's on town property, that's something that would probably fall to the town to do. And again, I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen. I think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot of good potential for long-term use of something like this, but just looking out for the taxpayer. The other thing is a detailed understanding of what exactly the plan is for use. You talk about a greenhouse space, but is it going to be open to anybody to grow whatever they want in there? Is it going to be something that's going to be maintained, curated? Will there be, if it is double glazed, is it going to have botanical plants in there that we could use to attract visitors to our town? Those types of things. And if it has the outdoor garden space as well, who's going to maintain that? Who's going to have access to that? Those types of questions.
Right. So what I'll tell you a little bit, and I think then Robert will probably have something to say about it as well. With regard to what the plans are for what who will be able to use it is pretty much the town, anybody in the town, and yes, open to everyone. And the plan is to have we don't have absolute programming done yet. That's coming along down the line, but it will definitely be an attraction to visitors, and we plan to have beautiful gardens outside as well as garden spots for people to have as community garden spots. We plan that some of the greenhouse also is for the garden, for the community, and possibly some of it, and of course all the programming will come later, but possibly some of it will be permanent plants. Who knows? Avocado tree, orange tree, something like that. That need to have, if it's possible, for part of it. And also, this is a seed starting place, and to extend our season to growing season, all 4 seasons. Pretty walking gardens outside as well. And it's an historical structure, and it will look beautiful once up. And the maintaining will be planned for as well. We plan that somebody will be a caretaker, and because it's going to need upkeep regularly. Robert, do you want to talk about what happened, our programming going forward? Not our programming, but the financial situation.
Well, let me just add just a little bit to the programming issue. The good news is that we have a lot of support. The Vermont Community Garden Network has agreed to help us develop the program based on their experience with hundreds of community gardens across the state. So we won't be starting from scratch. We won't be inventing the wheel in terms of how do we maintain it, how do we administer it, how do we control issues that could be problematic. So that's kind of takes a little bit of a burden off us. The other thing is that there are other large community greenhouses in New England, and we've reached out to the Dudley Greenhouse outside of Boston, and they've agreed to mentor us as well. And they're actually operating with hundreds of people using their greenhouse and several thousand involved in the operation, a scale much bigger than we would ever do. But they've kind of worked their way through all the problems and issues, and they've agreed to help us do the same and incorporate that into our programming. The other questions, Lee, though, are questions that we've been talking about very recently in terms of to make sure that the project is sustainable. And we've agreed as a board that we would not begin construction until we had secured funding to complete the project. So in other words, we don't dig a foundation and throw up half a wall and walk away.
Well, additionally, let me break in just a second. Additionally, it's funding for operational funding as well going forward, so that we won't build it until we have all the money for it. And we also are planning to have operational funding ongoing and not just year to year. We'll plan for how that's going to work.
And the other thing we thought about, particularly if to reassure the community, is to develop a plan for a long-term decommissioning fund, just in case there's an issue, there's a loss of interest, the property, for some reason, there's an issue with a lease or an agreement, that we are prepared to decommission and take it down. So this doesn't fall on a private property owner, doesn't fall on the town, but that would be town property. We need to consider those issues ahead of time and build it into our plan. And we recognize we have a responsibility to do that.
So finally, very fortunately, it's an extremely valuable structure that we have, and we already know somebody who will buy it if we don't want to use it anymore. So the pieces, the parts are very valuable in themselves.
And thank you very much for your responses to my questions. Last one, hopefully it's not an issue, but I'm assuming you've had it tested or gotten testing for lead and asbestos in the structure?
Yes.
It does have lead paint. We expected it, given that it dates to 1936. I've spoken to the state because initially we thought, oh, maybe we have to sandblast this and all of that stuff. And they actually said that they wouldn't want us to do that. They would want us to encapsulate it. So essentially it would likely be painted with epoxy paint. And they would certify that.
Fortunately, the greenhouse experts, both of the ones that we talked to, were expecting that also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be having future conversations as this project moves along and heads forward with the board and with the community. And it seems like you've already done quite a bit of homework regarding a lot of the issues that we brought up as we've been speaking tonight. It seems like it's in good hands. Does any other board member have any more questions or comments? Well, hearing none, I wish you folks the best as far as this project goes, and what we're going to do as a board is get a letter of recommendation together, and we'll have it hopefully for our next meeting, and we can go over it and see what we have and hopefully have it for you in the near future. And it's exciting. It's an extremely exciting project. I look forward to the journey that you guys are going to be on to get it to where, get it built and stuff. Thanks for all your hard work and your time, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is assistance to our firefighters grant application. And Julie, could you just refresh us on this? I know it's for a grant that comes along every so many years and stuff.
So the Assistance to Firefighters Grant is a program that is funded every year through FEMA. Some of you may recall, a couple of years ago, Yosemite Engine approached the town about hiring a grant writer to write a grant to fund a new tanker for the fire department. And we didn't get that award. But we are wanting to reapply. Ben Whalen is on, and he can answer some of the specifics about the truck if you have them. Yosemite Engine has volunteered to provide the match that would be required. We're a town of under 9 or 10,000 people, so our match is 5%. So this really would be no cost to the town. One of the things that we are potentially looking at is replacing the tanker, but replacing it potentially with a pumper tanker, which would therefore allow us to downsize and eliminate one piece of equipment from our fleet. There's some maneuvering around within the grant to be able to do that, but tankers are a priority funding for rural communities in this round. So we'd like to give it a shot. It's to you guys, number one, to approve the grant. Ben and I are going to do the grant writing. We're not going to go external. And to make sure that you are in agreement with accepting a donation. The highest match would be potentially $25,000 that Yosemite would be donating. And I know donations have been a discussion in the past, so. And Ben, maybe you want to elaborate a little more too, I'm not sure.
Hi everybody, it's nice to see some very familiar faces, and it's nice to be back on with you guys.
Nice to have you.
So yeah, Julie and I have chatted, and we've had some good conversations with the FEMA Region 1 director, not director, but essentially the guy who runs the grant for this region of the country, and found out some good news on essentially how our grant writing went last time. We didn't make it to panel last time, which was a little concerning, especially being the engine company paid about $3,000 at that point for the grant writer. But what we learned was that our application was actually essentially spot on. And that the reason that we weren't moved forward is because there was somebody out there with an older vehicle than ours. But with the criteria of our vehicle that, it's something that it may take a little bit, but it should be up for replacement through the grant. And to put a little, I guess, history on the vehicle itself. So the tanker is a 1985 Mack. I don't know if there's anybody on right now who's still driving a 1985 anything.
I am.
Yeah.
Jeff, you remember, but I think it was purchased in right around 2005. And so it is a 9, for those of you who understand what it means, it's a 9-speed split manual transmission, has some pretty touchy brakes, has 4,000 gallons of water on it, and it's in need of a lot of repairs and upgrades if you were wanting to do that. But I don't think, and I think everybody would pretty much agree, those repairs would be more costly than what the vehicle's worth. Certain things like it doesn't have seatbelts. And the last time we brought it down to Chris Carroll to get it worked on for welding wise, he essentially said the tank could potentially fall off it at some point. And at this point with the transmission, and it is not NFPA compliant. Obviously seatbelts are not compliant. And there's very few of us that are actually able to drive it. So that all said, what do we do with it? As far as AFG goes, it's a 5% match, as Julie said. So a great opportunity to get some federal funding, and move forward with it. And that aspect. One thing that we kind of heard about a little bit was the thought of operating the vehicle with half a tank of water to try and kind of make it maybe potentially easier to drive. And so that would actually be an unsafe thing to do, because of the amount of water that would be moving throughout that tank itself. There are baffles in it. But if you were to only have 2,000 gallons of water, you go into a corner and all that water is going to go onto one side of the vehicle, cause it to lean, potential to flip, or just lose control. And I think majority of studies of all tanker crashes are mainly caused by not having either a full or empty tank while transporting. I wrote some notes, so I'm just going to kind of go with it. I thought that you had pointed in, because I know you asked a lot of really, really good questions, so I wanted to have my topics covered to be prepared for you. So why do we need a tanker? Gist of it is, you look at the town of Chester, we have a pretty good hydrant system within the village itself. But you go outside of that village and we have, as I think we pretty much bring up every year, a pretty vast amount of roads that are not directly in the village. And so to get a large amount of water out to those places, if there is a fire, having that tanker would certainly be a pro. Right now, the tanker is not going out the door very much due to the risk management stuff of it, as well as people being able to drive it. But it's kept in the fleet right now because it is greatly increasing our insurance services office rating. So essentially the ISO rating for those who are buying houses in town, they're getting better rates based on the fact that we have this 4,000 gallon truck that's sitting in our fire station that is listed as in service and ready to go. Any questions on the truck itself before I talk a little bit about costs and Julie's reference to the potential of a pumper tank?
Well, thank you, Ben, for your nice comments, and it's nice to see you. I miss you. What would be the life expectancy of this vehicle?
So I would say if it's a sole tanker, that's its only purpose, minimum of 20 years. I would say if it was only used as a tanker, that would, you could, right now it's 35 years old, but it was not built to be a fire truck. It was originally owned by Basin, and they used it on putting water onto construction jobs at slow speeds, etc. So something purchased properly, easily 20 years, and I could see you getting more out of that if it was just solely used as a tanker.
Okay, so if Yosemite wasn't there in 20 years and the town had to replace it, we're looking at 20-25 years. So it's down the road a bit. Okay, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Ben, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, or I think maybe it was Julie that mentioned it, that sometimes when we have donations towards the purchase of equipment for the town, that we wanted to look at it a little closer and stuff. And that is the case sometimes when it was, my impression was that it was for new equipment that we didn't have. In this case, it's replacing something that we do have. So I don't think it would be an issue as far as the matching from the Yosemite Fire Department. In fact, it's really nice of them and generous of them to offer that for the town, because basically it's benefiting the town. We get a new piece of equipment. It doesn't cost the town any money whatsoever. And you guys get a needed pumper tanker truck that people could drive, and I bet you this one's probably going to be an automatic one.
It would definitely be an automatic one. Jeff can, when I started on the fire department back in 2001, I didn't have a driver's license at that point. But I know Jeff would agree, there were a lot of old-time firefighters that essentially the deal was we couldn't have a fire truck unless it was a stick shift, because you didn't know how to drive unless it was a stick.
Most of them were truck drivers. That was their job. So.
They were all truck drivers. So, we replaced engine 2 back in 2018. One of the big things on that was making it so at least the fire engines themselves were not manual transmissions. So especially a truck of this size, you need to be safe with it. But again, these trucks are designed to handle heavy loads of water and be able to operate in that manner. One thing I do want to, so the engine company was willing to donate up to $25,000 for a 5% match. That would obviously be worst case scenario of anything out of the Assistance Firefighters Grant. We do understand the capital plan and where things are at, and we know that we wanted to get this grant through and move forward, because it may take another 5 years of putting in for the same grant before we potentially see it. So to get that ball rolling. That said, this vehicle would not be paid for. So the grant has a 2-year performance period, and you can also apply to extend that performance period. And with that and the amount of time it takes to build a fire truck, we're looking at, so let's say we were awarded this grant in May. we would probably not be seeing this truck in Chester until 2023 by the time it was built. So one caveat of the engine company was if the town were able to donate anything, or not donate, but assist in that match fund at any level, whether that's a couple dollars or $5,000 or $10,000, especially with how fundraising has been going this year, our coffers are not that great. So I just want to put that out there, because that is how that was voted on, that I mentioned that all to you. But again, if that's not an option, and it's certainly not something I feel we need to discuss necessarily tonight, the engine company is willing and offering to cover that whole amount. I think it is important to also quickly talk about the concept of a pumper tanker versus a tanker. So let's say we are given the award, at that point, we will get some more definitive bids on what this actual truck would cost. And then the concept is, if we were able to trade engine one for a decent dollar value that would allow us to upgrade that grant vehicle to a combination vehicle of a pumper tanker. So be have a high capacity pump, whether it was 1,250 gallons a minute or 1,500 gallons a minute, with a 2,000 to 3,000 gallon tank on it, and also have storage capacity on the sides, which a typical tanker wouldn't, that we would explore moving forward with that. With the idea, we'd have one less vehicle in the fleet, and over the course of a 20-year time period, without having to replace that vehicle. And so by doing so, in 20 years from now, in the next 20 years, the town would probably save with inflation somewhere around $750,000 by reducing that fleet with the engine. So that's something we're going to explore if we get an award. But if we're unable to match that, we would certainly still move forward with the tanker itself due to the need of it being replaced.
So Ben, if I'm hearing you right, you're going to go through with this for just a tanker, but possibly a pumper tanker? You don't have to specify that in the beginning of the grant?
So in the grant itself, we would be putting in for a tanker. The concept is that you can overmatch and overbuild as long as you still have the minimums of that same spec. So as long as we have NFPA qualifying tanker, which I think is 1,500 gallons, we would be looking for more than that. You're able to move forward. You're just adding more money that is not given to you through the grant. So the thought would be, if we were able to get enough trade-in value on engine one, that we would be able to do that upgrade if possible.
So, yeah, okay, I get it. So it's for a tanker, and then down the line, if you traded in engine one, that would give you some money towards a pumper tanker.
Correct.
Yes. So these are all things that certainly, the fire department and the board would discuss before any of that happened. But just for the sake of transparency and everybody being on the same page, and also to see, we're trying to be fiscal responsible and looking into the future.
So Ben, excuse me, this is Lee. Two things. One is I'm driving a 1985 Honda Goldwing, so I know where you are. Second is this grant only for new equipment, or could it be used for purchase of used?
New.
If that were available?
So it is for new equipment with the Assistance Firefighters Grant. And one of the, yes, new equipment. And we score much higher due to the fact that we are replacing old equipment that is no longer NFPA and potentially OSHA compliant.
Thank you.
So Ben, this is Jeff. Is the coverage area considered in the application? Because I know, okay, so yeah, the Chester covers 65 square miles in the town of Chester, and then another 35 miles in Andover, plus whatever mutual aid we have. Okay, I didn't know.
So and I think Julie and I were both on the same conference call with the guy from FEMA, and I asked him he went over why we didn't succeed in that grant back in 2018, 17, somewhere in there. And again, he said our grant was written perfectly. We certainly have a vehicle that is far too old and unsafe. It should qualify for everything. Just you think about all of these communities in the entire country that are putting in for vehicles, and it's a pretty competitive situation to get in. So I think the fact that we've got a 1985 Mack that's just as old as Lee's Goldwing, we're doing pretty good. So I think we should try and trade in Goldwing as well.
All right, thank you.
Do I get a $25,000 match from Yosemite? I'm all over that.
Then you can get a Harley.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other questions or concerns? So,
Just a big thank you then.
Yes.
It's nice to see all your faces. So.
it's nice to see you. Wish it was in person, though, Ben.
Me as well, but it makes it much easier to talk to my kids.
Yeah, that's for sure. So at this point, Julie, we need a motion to...
You don't need a motion. We just want to we're just seeking approval
Yeah.
to move forward.
All right.
That's all. You don't need a motion on this.
So the consensus of the board is to move forward with it. It's a great idea.
Good luck.
Good luck in the project that you got coming up there, and thanks for all you do for the town, guys. Pretty soon you'll...
And just so Julie's, we're also working on part of it for replacing our air compressor for self-contained breathing apparatus. And that's going to be they're two separate applications essentially. So just because we put in for one doesn't mean we wouldn't be eligible for the other. And again, the FEMA guy thinks they're within scope of each other enough that they won't hurt each other.
And that's within my grant budget.
So Ben, have you been down to the new emergency services building to poke around and take a look?
I have not stopped.
Wow. It's coming along. It's looking great. It's pretty exciting.
No, it's great stuff, and to hear about where we're going to be here in the next 11 months, by the sounds of things, is great to see.
All right, so I guess we're all set if we don't have any other questions or comments or concerns. Thanks again, Ben. Appreciate the information, and good luck with the grant.
Yeah, thank you very much. Julie, do you need me at all for later on in the budget stuff, or are you all set?
No, we should be all set. But you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay, Ben, if you. You're welcome to stay, Ben, if you miss it that much.
Good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Good night, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Going down the list. The financial review just for the fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter. Fourth quarter. Did you say fourth quarter?
It says financial review fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah, okay. I thought you said first quarter. I'm sorry.
No, come on.
My bad.
Well, sometimes I do make statements like that and I mess up, but no, it's just the fourth quarter.
There's somebody on Zoom. Is Kathy? Can you identify your last name?
Kathy, can you hear us?
Hasbro, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Kathy.
I'm just listening.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
No, it's okay. We just have to get the names down on our minutes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kath. So Julie, you want to help us out with this fourth quarter review?
Sure.
Basically, it's the year-end review. Basically.
It's the year-end review. The budget you've been looking at the last couple times have had most of those fourth quarter numbers in there. For actuals, there's not much that's changed. Everything is in that we anticipate at this point. So we ended 2020 with a general fund surplus of $335,295.91, which is excellent. So when you get under your budget review, you can talk about how you want to best utilize that surplus that we have carrying forward. This 335 does not, this is a current year surplus, so it does not include any prior fund balance. This is just what was saved in 2020.
Just this year.
Just this year. And that savings is from several things. We had extra revenue. We took advantage of as much of the COVID revenue coming into the state as we could. It is largely in part to department heads just really watching their expenses, focusing on only what absolutely needed to be purchased this year, not something that's sustainable going forward. I've been saying that right along. There are some things definitely will continue as savings into the future, but this really is kind of a one-time. We wanted to get through the year not knowing what it was going to bring. And so this really is a product of department heads who know how to run their departments. This is where experience comes into play.
And also another big part of this is the reorganization of the front office.
Yeah. So we're down
There
a
was substantial savings in what happened
Yeah.
when you assumed your position as town manager, as far as salaries, as far as benefits go, and job descriptions and what people were doing. I mean, they all pulled together and they're doing the work, and they've managed to save quite a bit of money on that and there alone, which is very commendable for sure.
Thank you. So beyond that, unless you had specific questions about expenses for fourth quarter general fund, you will see I've given you also the balance sheet, which shows your current year fund balance, which does match what Sil and I came up with for the current year surplus. So I don't know if you had specific questions about fourth quarter financials.
What exactly is the fund balance right now for this year, at the end of this year?
So for current year fund balance only is the 335.
Yeah, but I mean...
So the prior to 2020, your fund balance was 263, 267, hang on.
So around 267,000 is the fund balance.
Prior year is
Accumulated.
263.
Yep.
That's
Not-
your accumulated fund balance.
Without
That's your-
anything happening this year.
That's your audited number as of 2019, your 2019 audited fund balance, which I am proposing that you just kind of let that sit there and ride.
Well, it was a recommendation of our auditors that
Correct.
that fund balance be either a minimum of 1 month monies that we operate on, and preferably 2.
Right.
So 2 months would be around
550.
500,000, so we're halfway there with the fund balance as it is, which is an excellent spot to be in.
Yep.
And the fact that we do have a surplus, like Julie was saying, is through a lot of hard work and by our town employees and the department heads to get to this point. But that being said, like Julie said, we can't expect this every year. I mean, we put off a few things that we could have done because in the beginning of the year there was so much uncertainty as far as what was going to be happening with our budgets and tax collection. So they switched to a different mode, an economy mode, and that's what they've gone through this year. So when I look at all the options and the things that, and we're just going to roll right into the general fund and the general fund budget and capital plan approval, because they're kind of intertwined anyways. As you come to the end of the fourth quarter, here's our budget, here's what's going on next year. So, one of the big things that we're going to have to decide, and there's some options that are spelled out here, is what to do with the surplus. I mean, 174.5 thousand is to the highway, so that has to go back to the highway. But Julie has outlined 4 different options here, and Julie, can you help me out on that about
Sure.
how they
So
kind of work and
Sure.
what's happening with them?
So with all of these options, I have taken, of that 335,000, I have taken 333,000 of it, just to get to a round number, and played with some different ways to accomplish kind of what everybody on the board had wanted to achieve at some level. That difference of 2,000 whatever is just used to offset the budget as it stands. So option one, which is the one that I was leaning towards, includes paying for your sidewalks at $200,000. It's paying upfront for that. It is also purchasing the police cruiser and not adding it to the capital plan. And letting the dump truck be financed through the capital plan over a 4 or 5 year option. I think in this capital plan I had said 5. Currently, we finance the dump trucks on a 5-year rotation anyways. So that's kind of keeping in line with what we have historically done.
Julie, I
Yep.
have a quick question. So
Yep.
the 174.5 from the highway surplus?
Yep.
That has to go back to highway?
It's gone back to
But
highway.
can it go to purchase equipment for highway, or it has to go into their?
So it just has to go to highway. So that has been budgeted in highway as a surplus, thereby reducing the amount of taxes that we have to raise for highway, which then trickles down to allowing you
Right.
this.
But I guess the question was, if we're going to buy a dump truck for 130, why not just pay for it, save whatever the
That's an option.
interest would be?
You can do that as well. You'll just have to finance another piece.
Right, well, I'm just curious, since we can only use that for highway, that would either reduce the tax rate to the taxpayer by $175,000, or we eliminate future expenses by purchasing outright a dump truck now, and then we're not increasing the taxpayer burden over the next 5 years, whatever it is for that. Is that, and I've heard a number of different opinions on whether it's better to borrow money, spread out the payments versus paying cash for stuff. So I'm not clear on what we should do, but I'm just wondering if that's even an option.
You can. You'll just need to finance one of the other items.
Right.
You don't have enough money to do everything.
Okay.
So that's,
So out of that 330, 175 of that is highway?
175 is highway, which is budgeted in highway as a surplus.
Right. Okay,
And-
so then there would be 241,000 remaining for the sidewalk and the cruiser, if we take the 130 out.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so option one, you're paying for the sidewalks, you're paying for the cruiser, you're financing the dump truck, you're adding 20,000 to your reserve fund, because that was important to some of the
Right.
board members, and you're adding a little bit to increasing your fund balance. There is an option here that is financing everything, because debt is cheap right now, and just lets the rest go into a reserve fund and a fund balance. I think that while we understand the concept that debt is cheap, and while we understand the concept that the auditors have no problem with the debt that we're carrying in our capital plan, debt for government is not something that's a negative. I think in the eyes of a lot of our citizens, they're just looking at a potential tax increase down the road. And so I think to appease them as well, not adding debt
Well, that's my
to
opinion
that capital
also.
plan would, in their eyes, would be something that would be beneficial.
Right, and that's my opinion also.
Yeah.
I just wasn't clear on where all the money was going, so I'm in agreement that option one, as you've laid it out,
Yes.
is a good solution.
Okay.
Especially because of the sidewalk deal. I think because that's something that we hadn't planned on. We were gonna have to come up with that money. And fortunately, because of the surplus, we have it. So it's something we're committed to, and I think we should just,
And it's a one-time expense.
Right.
It's not a recurring expense. The money's there at this point. We don't have to finance it over the 4 or 5
Right.
years.
Right.
We don't have to increase taxes because of it. we're in a pretty good position to be in, considering all that's going on in this country
Right.
and in the world as far as finances and COVID and everything else that's happening. It's actually refreshing to be sitting here and talking about a surplus. And what I think option one does is provides a little bit for everybody. It reduces our debt a little bit. It takes care of an obligation that is a one-time deal. It puts money into our fund balance also and into our reserve fund. So it hits all bases. And I think it satisfies a lot of different opinions on how budgets should be done and carried through and stuff. And I think, in my opinion, option one seems like a really good way to go. But and it is up to us. We can take it any way we want. I don't see lowering taxes is a good idea because this year I think is a fluke. It's not going to happen next year. So if we lowered taxes to that amount and kept all that debt, all we would be doing is next year raising taxes 2 or 3%
Right.
or whatever pennies and stuff. And
Yeah, the taxpayer's already given the money, so we can use it for obligations that we already have without dinging the taxpayer again.
Yeah,
And-
trying to
and I
help
think-
not raise our taxes in the future.
Right, exactly.
And I think we're using it wisely in option one.
Right, I agree.
Arnie?
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
Hi. Well, first of all, I want to say bravo, 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 because it is a good place to be in. The other thing, in my opinion, option one, I like for a couple of reasons. Number one, we've been talking about the reserve fund now for years. So hallelujah, we'd get 20,000 in there to start, which is really good. I also really believe in having a fund balance that, our auditor is recommending is just a healthy way to look at the budget. So I'm really pleased with those two. And I'm also pleased with paying for the cash for the sidewalks, and debt is cheap, on the cruiser, cash for that. Debt is cheap, or money's cheap right now. But we have some bumper years coming up. And so I think number one is also going to have a positive impact. Is it 23, 24, if we don't add the cruiser. So I vote for option one, and I'm going to get off here, but I want to say thank you to all. In the spring when it was we had no idea what was happening, and the board really directed Julie to cut spending unnecessarily just for this year. Everyone really rallied, and I'm super appreciative of that. And the other thing that I just want to say is I'm not 100% sure we're out of the woods, so to speak, of this financial, what could be catastrophic event for our country. So that's another reason why I like option one. And now I'll sign off. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, like you were saying, Heather, that putting the money into the reserve fund is finally something that we've been talking about a long time, and increasing our fund balance is extremely important. I mean, we're at around 250 now, and if we add another 72, that puts us a little like 322. We're getting to the point where, when we at our next item on our agenda, reserve fund policy, is that 2-month mark of around 500,000 that's recommended to have in there, and that fund policy is kind of similar like a reserve fund, because we're allowed to spend that down to, depending on what policy we adopt and what percentages, minimums and maximums we have, we're allowed to spend that in case of an emergency comes up, in case of a bridge needs repair or something happens. So you kind of have two different insurance policies. You have your fund balance policy in case, and then you have the reserve fund too, which is, it's always comforting to have some money in the bank for those rainy days, and that's kind of where we're heading, and I think it's important that we go that way.
Well, and the other benefit of a healthy fund balance is your cash flow. So when you've got a fund balance of 500,000, you could potentially eliminate a TAN at some point. So
That's what I would like to
its
see.
real benefit is the cash flow piece.
I mean, like,
Well, and it's also, sorry, I was
No, go ahead,
I have to.
It also, I've been on the board almost 6 years now, and there have been several times, I'm thinking of the bridge recently, that we needed $89,000. And, if money's cheap, okay, so let's take out a loan and spread it out over 5 years. But money's not always cheap, and I don't know what the future holds. So for future boards, I think our stewardship of how we handle this is going to give future boards more leeway in how they make these decisions.
Agreed.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments or concerns? Because basically at this point, we're looking at those options and trying to decide what route we're going to go. And from my seat here, it seems like option one is the choice of
Yeah,
the board.
I looked them over and I'm for option one myself, so.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for the explanation that Julie gave us and others who worked on this. It makes it much easier for understanding it. And it makes a lot of sense. I support option one as well.
So do we need a
And I'm so
motion?
glad that Ron came and talked to us. Was it last year when we talked about reserve fund? Or fund, yeah. I was very worthwhile.
So
We're
do we
lucky
need a
that
motion on this?
Go ahead, Lee.
Do we need a motion on this?
When you're ready to set your budget, you will need a motion, yes.
Okay.
But that's going to be on the budget amount, but you realize it's option one that we're going for, so
Yep.
it's option one along with
Yep.
the budget amount?
Yep,
Okay.
I have your direction. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion or concern about our general fund budget and capital plan? Other than the final numbers, much hasn't changed since our reviews that we've done over the last couple of months. There's nothing popped up.
What I have added in here is, in the last page, transfer accounts. So what we transfer to the reserve fund, or to the grant fund is now in here. Remember, you used to get that summary page, and we had to add all the different columns, so everything is now in here because the grant fund is a transfer to that fund. So it's here with all the other transfers. So that's one thing that's been added. I've added the voted articles. Lee asked if we could see what it looks like when the voted articles are added. This is assuming that they're all approved. So we won't vote that budget tonight, but because that'll be voted separately. So those were the major changes in the way this looks and reads a little bit differently than it has in the past.
But the amount that's in our budget is that 30,000 that we're adding to the grant fund.
Correct. Except it being on a separate page, it's now all contained within one document,
Yep.
not multiple documents.
And one line on the budget.
One line in the
This is an
budget, correct.
explanation of how it all works and where it's going and coming from. And
Correct. I think it's just easier. It's easier for Sil when it comes to putting stuff into the accounting system as well.
it really helps with the clarity and the
It does.
transparency
That's what we tried
of where
to-
the monies are
yeah.
going. I mean,
Yeah.
you could look at this budget and find whatever question you have, you could find the answer here when it comes to spending money, where it's going. And it's all,
I hope so.
And it's all clear.
so.
And that's huge when it comes to people having trust in their government and stuff, and the monies that we spend and what we do with the money and stuff. I think you did a great job, you and the office and everybody else that's still, that's been
Yes.
involved in this budget and stuff. So we would need a motion
You need
for
a
the budget amount, the net budget voted at town meeting, which would be $3,342,887.01, along with option one for the surplus.
So I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I didn't even catch who said the first. Lee? Lee Gustafson for the motion, and who was the second?
I think it was me, Heather.
Okay, Heather's the second. Any further discussion? Any further comments on it?
Yep.
All those in favor of approving that budget number for 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, that closes a chapter on about 3 months' worth of work, at least, probably more in the background. I mean, we get the easy part. It's all explained to us and handed to us and shown to us what's going on. And I'd like to just repeat, you've done a fantastic job with it, and everybody that's been involved with this. And that's the department heads, the employees, this whole town, working together to get to where we are and stuff.
It's definitely been a different kind of year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
And you know,
I'm
I'm
hoping
really happy with it.
2021 is on the upswing here.
Yes.
It was a good day today. So we're all set with the general fund and capital plan approval. So the next item is the reserve fund policy. Everybody in their package got a reserve fund policy. And
Actually, this is the fund balance
Oh, I'm
policy.
sorry.
Yeah, the agenda item, I kind of screwed up on there. No.
oh, the fund balance.
It's the fund balance policy that you have.
Fund balance.
We have to put the fund balance policy into effect first, because your reserve fund comes from your fund balance policy.
Run that by me again?
So, what you contribute to your reserve fund is based out of your fund balance.
Of what you could do with.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Because it
So,
starts off in your fund balance.
correct, exactly.
And then where you send it is
Yeah.
a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is nothing that you will approve tonight. This is the start for Ron and I. This will be your fund balance policy, something along these lines. You need to set the parameters of the use of your fund balance. And one of those parameters will be in section 5. In that list of uses, there will be a line that talks about funding a reserve fund. And then there will be descriptions within that talk about the use of your reserve fund. But what I need from you guys is the things that I've kind of highlighted in yellow are the big things that we need to kind of work our way through first, those thresholds. And then Ron and I are going to finalize, he's working right now on the language. We've had some good conversations around what happened at town meeting a couple years ago and people's concerns and how do we fund this and what's the difference, in the uses of them. And so there'll be much more language being described here. But to get us started, we need to know, what kind of money are you wanting in your fund balance?
Julie,
Yes, ma'am.
I know that the reserve the fund policy and the fund balance policy is different. I understand that. But when we were long ago talking about the reserve fund policy, it was not going to be in excess of 25% of the total budget. So I really like that number. I don't understand what is meant to bring the balance that the town of Chester at the end of that paragraph on page 2, where we're going to take no longer than 3 years. So are we saying that we are going to get it to $500,000 or what, 550, whatever it was, in 3 years? Is that what we're saying there?
No, I think that.
If it drops below the minimum, so if it drops below your minimum, which in this is proposed as 1 month. So if it drops below $225,000, you're going to get it back up to whatever your threshold is. Ron's recommendation is 2 months. You're going to get it from the 225 to the 550 in 3 years. And again, you can change that number. You can give yourself 5 years or 10 years or.
Okay, well, that's his recommendation. Now I just understand it.
Yep.
Which is still, thank you.
Julie, I didn't take it that way when I looked at it, but it says no transfers shall be made that would reduce the balance below the 8.3. But it says you could do that, but if you do that, you have to make it up in 3 years.
Right.
Back up to that 8.3.
Right. I think it's more of things happen in a year. unforeseen things. And your fund balance may
Go below.
incidentally drop below that amount.
And all this is saying is that you have to recoup that in 3 years to bring
Correct.
it back to that minimum.
Correct.
And even that we could play with if we didn't want to go that way.
Exactly,
But-
absolutely.
But this is,
Yep.
go ahead, Heather, you have a question?
If we didn't use a TAN note and our reserve funds dropped, what this is saying is you have to pay it back, you have to get it up to a certain amount within a certain time, which I think is a good policy. I understand it now, and that sounds good.
Typical TAN note. What's the value?
We usually borrow anywhere from 800,000 to $1 million. But the past couple years, we have not had to draw. We've changed, this year, I'm not sure that we've drawn much at all. During 2021, actually. We kind of changed the way we're doing things, so we're trying to best capitalize our cash flow. Before, just simple things, like before we would get an invoicing, and it would go instantly onto your next warrant. Well, most invoices have 30 days, so now they don't get paid until the 30 days. It's those little things like that, the way we're paying the schools, is improving our cash flow. So it's little pieces along the way, but it's made a pretty dramatic effect.
So in order for us to eliminate the TAN notes, we'd have to have a reserve of $500,000, $1 million, or not?
Not necessarily, no.
Because
It's just a game in the shifting of
Right.
money.
I guess I just have a philosophical issue with the town holding on to $500,000 of taxpayers' money just to have it. You know, I can see the 250 or 300 or whatever, but you know, you get a $500,000 that the taxpayers have contributed, we've contributed to this fund, and it just sits there for most of the time. I understand the purpose of it, but it just philosophically it bugs me that, you know, we're just kind of hanging on to that. Because we're a government, not a family. You know, I have reserves for my family, and so I use those in the event that something happens, but that's me, not a government. So just something to throw out there, not that we're going to make a decision today, but just that's kind of where I'm coming from.
But you got to think about too, Lee, because that was a concern from several people at that particular town meeting. But the government has things that's unforeseen as well.
Sure, yeah, no, I get that.
Like a
You
bridge.
know, is it a $500,000 worth of unforeseen stuff? I don't
Well,
know.
so say during this COVID time, was a prime example, what would have happened if our tax collections had dropped?
Yeah,
I
no.
would have been looking at a second TAN and may not have gotten it from the bank because towns were
Right.
doing that. So we would have run into an issue.
Right.
So is that happen often? No, like this is the first
Right,
time ever,
exactly.
right? But it is there in that case. The other way that your fund balance can be used is, now that we're watching our fund balance more closely and we're utilizing that fund balance the way we should be, if we had a Palmer Bridge, you could pay for it. You could
Right.
reduce your fund balance by that and not borrow. And right now, money's cheap, but in 2 years it may not be.
Right.
So you're going to be saving on that interest rate
Yeah.
piece too. So it does give you some flexibility what that threshold is. Ron's recommendation to all of his clients is 2 months because, you know, that would be probably something fairly dramatic. It would give you time to continue paying your bills and figure out, you know, how you're going to borrow and those types of things, because TANs are not turned around. It's 30 to 45 days to get a TAN note.
So
So-
what do we do with that money that's in the reserve fund? Is it invested? Is it somewhere we can get access to it pretty readily, or is it just cash sitting in somebody's safe somewhere?
It's cash sitting, I believe it's cash sitting there. Because it's got to be liquid. It's got to be completely liquid.
Right.
Yeah. What was that, Heather?
Well, at some point though, if you have $500,000, which is only 2 months, it's not like a huge buffer. But if you have that amount of money, I think we could check with Ron, but there could be a chance that we put half of it in you know, a small savings account or something. I think you're allowed to do things like that.
I could certainly check with Ron.
And again, I'm just kind of laying some thoughts
No,
out.
absolutely.
Not necessarily, I'm not exactly sure of the direction I want to go at this point, but, I mean, I think it's important to have the reserve fund. I think it's important to have that cash available, because it will save us in the long run money, but what's it going to cost us to save that money?
One question I had on where it said property tax base, it says Chester received payments twice a year.
Oh, where did you see that?
On page 2, the first property tax base.
Oh, didn't catch that. Yep, that's once a year. Yep, sorry, I thought I caught them all.
So are you looking for input as far as to those basic numbers of 1
Yeah.
month, 2 months type thing?
What are you thinking? You know, are you thinking following what's here? Are you thinking of, you know, do you want your, you know, maximum to be 3 months? I mean, I don't, you know, think that's
So
necessary,
this is
but
coming to what you were saying, Lee. Do we want that 2 months, which is about 500,000, or do we want it less? Do we want it, where do we want it?
what is your threshold?
They're looking for recommendations on the consensus of the board on where we want to go with this, because it's a decision that we're going to have to make when we go to finalize this. I mean, the recommendation is 2 months, and then they talk about, well, it can't go below 1 month, and it can't go more than 2 months. It seems like,
I think that's what Ron has recommended.
And I think he's recommended this for a while, Julie, right?
So, and I think
There's standard practices, and he brings us this information. So I'm really comfortable with following Ron's expertise and guidance in this. So I think the 2 months as a goal, not under 1 month, these terms seem pretty reasonable.
So I guess the next question is, how tied to these numbers are we? You know, let's say we're not at 16.66%. Do we have to get up there, or is it only once we get below the 8.33% that we have to start shoveling money in?
You just gradually start to get there. When you have years that you've got surpluses like this year, it's the perfect year to add a little bit to your fund balance.
Right.
There's no magic time period.
Okay.
It's
we don't
just,
have to do anything.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess I'm looking for some flexibility in this policy.
especially because you're already at your 1 month, you're already
Right.
above your minimum
Right.
with your current 2019 fund balance, so.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, are we good there, or are we being required by this policy to go up to the 2 months?
No,
And what
that,
we're
the 2
saying is
months,
the 2 months is the target, but we don't necessarily have any impetus to get there, other than if we have excess funds that we could put in that reserve
The
fund.
way I see it, these are just recommended goals.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
yeah, well, and it says the targeted balance is 2 months.
That, and the flexibility is there.
Right.
And even that minimum, it seems like even if we spend it below that minimum, we have 3 years to make it up, and we can even change that if you didn't, if
Right.
you don't want to.
If you want to give more than 3, if you want to give 5 years.
So, sorry.
Make it
we don't
5
have to
years
make
or
it up if we
whatever,
don't
but-
want.
Right. Well, I guess I'm comfortable with this as it's worded now. I don't necessarily have any recommendations for changing the numbers or the time frame, for that matter.
Okay.
All right. So the general consensus of the board is to basically go with this policy that as written.
Okay.
Along with the few of the, no, just the one little.
Yep.
little
Well, and
twist.
we'll be adding to F.
And that's the et cetera part, huh?
That's the et cetera part. The et cetera is the stuff that Ron and I are working on now.
I read et cetera.
That will be coming back to you.
I said, well, et cetera, that's pretty specific.
No,
So will
et
this,
cetera will not remain in that policy.
will this document be presented to the towns for a vote at town meeting? Is that,
This is a select board policy. The community
Okay.
doesn't vote policy. What they will be voting when they vote the budget is the 20,000 going into the reserve fund,
okay.
or your addition of 72,000 to the fund balance.
So are we going to publish this in the town report?
I won't have it done in time for the town report, but we can certainly get it, because you guys will have to adopt it. The town report will be going to print the end of next week.
Right.
But we can certainly get it out there in the community.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Plenty of ways to do that.
Because the last time we talked about reserve fund at town meeting, it was tabled because we didn't have the policy worked out. So now if we can get that information to the townspeople before the vote.
Yes,
that would be helpful.
absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
All good then.
Yep, well, I have my direction, and we'll be back, Ron and I'll be back with the next round.
Great. Next item on our agenda is just a little housekeeping. Our certificate of highway miles, year ending February 10th, 2021. It's the same as last year, nothing's changed, nothing
Nothing's
added,
changed.
nothing deleted. We have to just sign this, or do we need a motion to approve?
I think you do a motion to approve that and then sign it, I think.
I would entertain a motion to approve our certificate of highway miles, year ending February 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Second. Wanted to give somebody else a chance.
Heather's the motion, Lee Dakin's the second. Any questions or concerns on this? So this is just standard
Yeah,
procedure
standard housekeeping,
that the
yep.
town, the state wants to know what we have for miles of roads of all the different classes, because it affects our funding, doesn't it?
Yeah, our state aid highway money is based on that. But we have not added or deleted any roads this year, so.
So all those in favor of approving that, that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody nay? No. So it's got lines for 3 signatures.
If you three sign, it's fine. Usually you guys all squeeze your names in there, but there's no
All
need.
lines small.
There's no need to have extra people come in. It's fine.
Oh, it's all back?
Well,
Yeah,
I have
we'll get it.
not.
We'll get it
I'll
after.
hand it in later.
Okay.
Save me a walk.
Next item is new agenda. Next agenda, new business. I guess, Julie.
The only thing I wanted to point out, I gave you in your packet, tomorrow at 10, Peoples will be here, actually, it may be via Zoom, I think. We'll be here to, with the trustee of public funds to review those those balances. The Economic Development Fund, I'm going to have them come to a meeting or attend one of our meetings via Zoom to talk about our fund. But I just wanted to let you know, I know on occasion some of you have liked to attend these.
But this is Zoom also.
This is Zoom, yeah, it is via Zoom. Sorry, this is something that Debbie sets up. So I will not be there. I am bringing Mika to the airport tomorrow. She's heading back to school. So I am not going to be at this meeting. Debbie will be there, but if any of you want to attend,
You're brave.
I'm brave.
Flying?
Yeah, well, she has no other way to really get there.
It's a long walk.
Huh?
It's a long walk.
Those were the only two options.
She takes all her precautions. She's very careful.
Go ahead, Heather.
Two things I just want to follow up.
With is how we're monitoring speed limits in Andover in particular, and also in a meeting in February, could we have another rundown from Debbie or someone about how everyone can vote because I just want that on the website and a refresher for everyone. If, you know, absentee voting at town hall before, you know, and also coming to town hall. But I'd really like that to just get out again.
One of the things, Heather, that we are doing, Amy has been working on, we are mailing a half-sheet size postcard to all of our registered voters that explains exactly what's happening. And options that are available, that all articles will be by Australian ballot, about our informational meeting, how they can vote, where they can vote. So that is going out to all of the registered voters in Chester. But we can definitely put it on the next agenda if you want.
You definitely,
Well, and just talk about it a lot and have it on the website, you know, I just
Think the more ways that we can get the word out, the better it is.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other items for future agendas or any other new business? I thought I had written something down, but, oh, I can't, oh, there was one thing. I know the Planning Commission has been working really hard in the changes that are towards the town plan and the zoning bylaws and stuff. Is it appropriate for us to ask them a summary of changes that are up to so far that they've made, you know, any substantial changes that they've made?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
I'm just curious, maybe they can, you know, prepare a list of things of what they've already done where the changes are.
Okay.
That's all I had. Hearing no other items for new business or future agenda items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Lee, the motion, Jeff's the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
thank you all.